Hi guys, we have a little guest appearance today. This is Rory. She did not want to let Mama work today, so she's going to be in the video with us. So if you hear her, sorry. But the next video for this unit is adolescence. And as we know, adolescence starts physically with puberty, which is usually between 11 and 14 years old. And that is where the sex organs mature. And this has important implications for the way that adolescents feel about themselves, because self-image is greatly affected by when we physically mature. Early maturing boys tend to do better in athletics. Therefore, they are more popular, and they do better purely because they have more muscle mass because they've gone through puberty already. And this helps them develop a more positive self-concept. However, they do tend to get in a little bit more trouble. They tend to get involved with substance abuse, mainly because they look older and they have friends that are older. In the long run, however, early maturing boys are typically more responsible and cooperative later in life. Early maturing girls are more sought after for dates for obvious reasons. They tend to have better self-esteem than later developing girls. However, if they develop too early, then it's the opposite, right? So it can be embarrassing if they develop much sooner than the rest of their friends. Later developing boys and girls also psychologically affect them. Boys who develop later are often smaller and less coordinated, and therefore they're seen as less attractive, which then in turn affects their self-esteem and their self-concept. Girls who develop later tend to be at a disadvantage in junior high and high school. We all remember those times when everything is based on your appearance, right? And if you develop later, then you're going to not be quite as high on that social ladder. However, later in life, because girls who develop later tend to be tall and slim, they often report a greater satisfaction with their bodies once they are adults, because it's a societal ideal. Cognitive development in adolescence is usually adolescents are in the formal operational stage, according to Piaget. And this is the idea that they can begin to reason hypothetically and think about the consequences of their actions, which then in turn leads to a better understanding of their moral principles, which leads us to moral development. Lawrence Kohlberg is the psychologist that we associate with moral development. He believes that our moral reasoning helps guide our behavior. And what he did is he proposed moral dilemmas that he would ask people, and then those would dictate which stage they were in. Kohlberg decided on 3 levels of moral development. And what he said is that there's no real age restrictions on these moral stages. You can be in one as a child or as an adult. The only stipulation he said is that the last level, the 3rd level, you had to be at least 13 to reach that level because otherwise you couldn't cognitively understand it. And you'll get that once we go through all 3 stages. So the first stage is the pre-conventional stage. This is usually young children. However, like I said, adults can be in this stage as well. And this stage is the idea that your moral behaviors and your actions are based on rewards and punishments. So when you're behaving a certain way, you are deciding, what is in it for me? Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get something for doing this? It's not about whether or not it's right. You're just doing it because you're going to get something out of it. The next stage is the conventional stage. And this is where you're interested in pleasing others and doing what is right by social laws. So you're following rules. You're considering more than yourself. You're considering your family. You're considering your loved ones. But you also don't really want to break the rules. You're kind of just doing what is right because that's what you should do. And then the final stage is the post-conventional stage. This is the stage that I said you have to be at least 13 to be in, according to Kohlberg, because you don't have the cognitive ability to understand this stage until you're over that age. And what this stage is that you are using higher reasoning to guide your behavior. You're thinking about justice, equality, basic human rights. The idea that it might not be it might be breaking the rules to do this. However, it's the right thing to do. So the idea is that it might not be like you might be against the law, but you know that you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Okay, social development. Social development was devised by Erik Erikson. We're going to talk about all of his levels of social development, not just the adolescent stages, but they just kind of fit well in here. So Erikson looked at psychosocial development. So the idea was that we are looking at our social development not only by people that are around us and how we interact with other people, but also our knowledge and understanding of ourselves and how we fit in with society. He believed that each stage that we go through, we have to resolve a conflict or we won't fully get out of that stage. Or we'll have negative consequences of that stage. So each of the stages has 2 vocab words that you'll need to know. But each of those vocab words kind of tells you what the stage is and what level they'll be in or what age. The first is trust versus mistrust. This is 0 to 18 months. This is the idea where babies are just kind of figuring out, who can I trust in the world? Can I rely on my caregiver to provide for me what I need? So if their caregiver, or their parents in this case, if the child and the parent becomes attached, securely attached, then the child develops a sense of trust and predictability. If there is inconsistency in the care or lacking in care, the infant will develop a sense of mistrust or paranoia. The idea that, when am I going to get what I need? The next stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is 18 months to about 3 years of age. This is those terrible 2s or terrible 3s. And this is when kids are kind of deciding ideas for themselves. They are making decisions for themselves. So this is the stage where kids really want to make the decisions on their own. So like deciding between a red or a blue cup. Parents need to set boundaries. However, they need to let the child have some autonomy, right? Or those independence in making those decisions. If a child is overly restricted, meaning they're not given this idea of autonomy, then they are unable to assert themselves, the sense of shame, right? If a child is given too much independence, there's no boundaries, then a child will become overly demanding and controlling. Child will also have a sense of shame and self-consciousness. The next stage is initiative versus guilt, okay? Initiative is like, if I take the initiative, I'm doing something, right? So am I capable of doing things for myself? This is age 3 to 6. This is the age where kids want to do everything by themselves. So not just make the decision, right? But now they want to do everything. Putting on their own clothes, putting on their own seatbelt, getting their own milk, right? Those are the things that the child really wants to do. If a parent reacts positively to this, then the child feels confident that they can take risks, and they have self-confidence. They feel good about themselves. If the parent reacts negatively, then the child will lack self-sufficiency. They're going to be very dependent, have a low self-esteem, and they might even fear punishment for doing things on their own. There's a video that I think you should watch on your own. Come back to these slides and watch it. This is a really good example of a child in this stage of autonomy or initiative versus guilt. The next stage is industry versus inferiority. So this is school age, 6 to 11. Think about this time in your life. What were you doing? You were getting involved in sports. You were figuring out what you liked to do, what you were good at. And so this is what that stage is all about. Am I capable of doing things socially? And if a child finds something that they're good at or something that they really enjoy, they have a sense of pride and they feel really good about it and want to continue to do it. If they don't find something that they're good at, then they feel inferior to their peers or not as good as others. The next stage is one that you guys are all in right now. Identity versus role confusion. This is 12 to 20, so mostly preteen, teenagers, and young adulthood. And this is where you're trying to figure out who you are in this world. Trying to discover what you want to do, what are your strengths, what roles are you good at, what roles are you suited to be. And if you do this, if you have a sense of who you are going to do better later in life. If you have some confusion or you're not really sure what you want to do, it can lead to an unstable identity or the adoption of socially unacceptable roles. So think about this stage. This is the time when you feel pressure to identify what you want to do in your life. You tend to separate yourself from your parents. You tend to rely more on your peer group than you do on your parents. It's really a time when you are developing personal relationships and deciding what is your true self. What role are you going to play in this world? The next stage is from age 20 to 30, and that's intimacy versus isolation. So what are you doing in this stage? Most people are finding a partner and getting married, right? So can I love and be loved? Developing intimacy, relationships, a sense of connectedness with other people. And if you don't find this, then you tend to draw inward and avoid any close emotional contact with other people. The next stage is generativity versus stagnation. This is a hard one to remember. But what I want you to do is remember the root word of the first word, generativity, generate, okay? So to generate something is to produce something, right? So this is, am I producing something and giving back to the world? If you feel like you are making a difference by having children, having a good job, being involved with your community, then you're happy with your life and you feel a sense of accomplishment. If you don't, if you feel stagnant, right? If stagnant means to stay in one place, then you feel a sense of worthlessness. You are preoccupied with yourself. You might want to try and change that. And that's your midlife crisis where you tend to say, hey, I really need to fix what's going on here. And then our final stage is integrity versus despair. This is looking back on your life. So 65 plus, has it been worth it? Have I done enough? Have I made a difference in this world? And if you feel like you have, then you look back at your life and you're happy about it. You have a strong sense of acceptance of where your life is, where the next stages in your life are going to be. However, if you feel like you haven't done enough, then you feel this sense of despair or a sense of regret or disappointment about your life. And then finally, there is a short video here that you can watch if you go back into these slides on my CMH. Everyone say goodbye, Rory. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Time to go.